scientists from Harvard are going to release aerosols into the atmosphere to block out the sun and prevent global warming. What if they get this wrong? What happens then? Well, it's called global famine, massive collapse of human civilization, worldwide starvation, collapse in the food supply, and so on. It's happened before. Most of this climate change science that's being produced out there is bogus science. It's not even legitimate. They're making things up, they're altering data, they are deciding what outcome they want before they do the experiment. Stop messing with the atmosphere. The sun is fine, we don't need to block it out. Most people lack sunlight, they lack vitamin D. That's why cancer rates are so high all across the first world nations. We're not getting enough sunlight. Let us get back to the things that actually support life and support ecosystems, such as CO2 and sunlight and clean water and normal genetics without your GMO genetic pollution that's also threatening the entire food supply. It's very simple. Stop playing God with the planet and it will be just fine.
I witnessed something really peculiar going on, and I started asking questions. California was experiencing a very severe 6-year drought. We were due some rain finally. And I was out there in my rain boots with my raincoat on because we were expecting the storm. It was a 100% chance of rain for the next week. And these dark storm clouds were coming off the ocean. About a dozen planes showed up on the edge of the storm. I witnessed a grid pattern of plane after plane after plane lining the sky until it was a milky white haze. And then the storm came. The next day, the storm came, and it didn't rain. We didn't get a single drop of rain. I was a little distraught and confused. And then I learned that if you put aluminum in the atmosphere, it's the opposite of silver cloud seeding, that the aluminum actually dissipates the moisture and you can make it not rain with aluminum. And like what I witnessed drought causation. I witnessed man-made manipulation of the weather, and they were causing the drought by interference, by weather engineering. There's a lot of theories. Ultimately, I believe that they were testing their weapons. They're seeing what they could do with their ionosphere heaters. It's a slow agenda, you know, it's 1 year at a time, and really it's just an attack on the next generation. So what do they want? They want control over the water. They want control over the food. And what they have done is they are slowly but surely knocking out the small farmer. Well, that farmer is getting gobbled up by big ag, and you know they're controlled by Monsanto, and ultimately it's just full spectrum dominance of your food, your water, your air, everything. And now they're pitching to us that we need this solar geoengineering to slow down global warming. So they're going to be spraying with planes, persistent linear cirrus cloud formations, and they've developed the patents and the means to do so to save us from global warming. There's a self-proclaimed geoengineering governance regime that was just established in May 18th in Chicago. So there's a new panel that was just developed called the C2G2, and it's a group of people who have been nominated to govern this geoengineering, and David Keith is on the board. But his company will be capturing carbon and spraying reflective nanoparticulate metals in the atmosphere to reflect sunlight. They will be billing the populace of the planet for the solar radiation management. They will be taxing everyone for their carbon emissions. And we're supposed to be thankful for this, for them blocking out the sun, dictating who gets sunlight, when and where. But it's actually a diabolical agenda to have complete and total control over everything on Earth. And they've learned that they can introduce metallic nanoparticles, such as barium, strontium, and aluminum. But ultimately what they're doing is they're using ionospheric heaters, these land-based Tesla technology antenna arrays, the first of which was HARP in Alaska, but they have these all over the planet now. And they're superheating the ionosphere. And with this superheating of the atmosphere, they create high pressure, they create heat waves, they create drought, they steer jet streams. And if you want to talk about global warming and you're not going to talk about ionospheric heaters, you're totally missing the point. Weather complications that we're witnessing, the intensified hurricanes, the drought, and the flooding, I hate to say it, but they're learning how to weaponize the weather. Katrina was part of this HAMP, the Hurricane Atmospheric Modification Program. They were putting carbon, black carbon soot, in the hurricane to see what it would do, and it made it larger. So they're actually experimenting with putting carbon in the atmosphere, not telling you about it, and blaming you for your car emissions. They're exposing themselves, right? They are exposing how bad that they really are. And so that's our opportunity to awaken to it all.
la agresión contra Venezuela. Venezuela es una base fundamental de estabilidad de todo el Caribe, de América del Sur. Si Venezuela fuera desmembrada, si la revolución bolivariana fuera golpeada hasta el punto de llevarnos a tomar las armas, nosotros combatiríamos nuevamente con la misma bandera e iríamos más allá de nuestra frontera. Piénsenlo bien, los estrategas de los Estados Unidos. Venezuela está en disposición de vivir en paz, de vivir tranquilamente.
Amidst Venezuela's economic turmoil, the main charge being levied at the government is that it's a dictatorship, where Maduro shut down the attempt to recall his presidency and is now consolidating power to maintain control. The opposition alleges this power grab is happening through what's called the Constituent Assembly, a call for a, quote, people's body to rewrite the Constitution spearheaded by Chavez in 1999. In short, the Constituent Assembly will consist of elected delegates from various communities with the power to draft constitutional amendments. The changes put forward by the elected assembly will then be put to a vote by all Venezuelans. Yet nothing has drawn more ire, condemnation, and panic from imperial powers and the opposition than this proposal. While traveling around the countryside, I saw that one thing is clear. There's a high degree of excitement and participation in the Constituent Assembly from Venezuelan society.
Que Venezuela toda completa apoye la nueva constitución que se va a hacer aquí en Venezuela. ¿Por qué? Porque con eso vamos a tener la paz, la justicia y de toda la moralidad.
Los revolucionarios y las revolucionarias somos invisibles entre los medios extranjeros. Entonces ellos pasan la marcha de la oposición, pero invisibilizan cómo llenamos la Avenida Bolívar.
The opposition claims the assembly could rewrite the laws to exclude their parties out of power entirely. But regardless of what the opposition claims and government supporters want to accomplish with the assembly, it is an open democratic process. So if the main opposition parties, which again claim to have majority support in Venezuela, are demanding political change, one would think they would use their support to run their own candidates and push their own proposals. Instead, these leaders and organizations are calling for all Venezuelans to boycott the process and take to the streets to shut down the country. In 2013 and other times, the opposition was calling for exactly this, a Constituent National Assembly. Why are they rejecting it now? Why do they refuse to be a part of it?
Porque ellos nunca han estado interesados en un proceso electoral que se dé en el marco o que busque la estabilidad política del país. Ellos quieren llegar al poder por la vía de la caotización o incluso algunos sectores más extremistas de la guerra civil en Venezuela, ¿no?
No matter what your opinion, this is the crux of the situation in Venezuela. Regardless of any shortcomings of the government, regardless of any critiques from the right or the left, one thing is undeniable. Chavismo exists as a grassroots popular political force, a phenomenon of millions of progressive people. You see it and feel it in the streets wherever you go. Their existence and vision is a reality that cannot be ignored. And any person claiming to be for democracy cannot extinguish their voices.
votre chef.
At 39, he's the youngest president France has ever had, but don't let his age fool you. This boy had to grow up quick. He met his current wife, Brigitte Macron, when he was just 15 years old, and she was his 39-year-old French teacher. Yes, you did hear that correctly. He was 15 and she was 39. In 2008, Macron paid 50,000 euros to buy himself out of his government contract, where at the time he was serving as the Inspector of Finance in the French Ministry of Economy. He then went on to become an investment banker in a very highly paid position at Rothschild & C Bank. So from the time he was a very young man, Macron was trained and groomed and mentored by an older elite class. And now his true colors are revealing themselves as he just announced that he desires to reign as a Jupiterian president. A remote, dignified figure like the Roman god of gods, who weighs his rare pronouncements carefully. He threatened to overrule lawmakers with a referendum if they try to frustrate the reforms that he wishes to impose on the legislature. So it seems to me that France is heading towards some dark times under the reign of this Jupiterian president who was groomed by both a pedophile and a Rothschild. So is this the beginning of the end for the freedoms of people in France?
öffentliche Debatte zu den Vorgängen in Hamburg verläuft ziemlich eindeutig. Schuld an der Gewalt sind im weitesten Sinne die Linken. Besonders breit und massiv ist die Zuweisung von Verantwortung an die Linken von Innenminister de Maizière. Er sprach mehrmals von der Verantwortung der linken Parteien für die Gewalt. Die Frage danach, ob die Gewalt von ganz anderen Kräften provoziert sein könnte, wird in der öffentlichen Debatte von Politik und Medien nicht gestellt. Wenn nun aber ein ausreichend großer Kern von linken Gewalttätern von ganz anderen Leuten befeuert und gelenkt war, was ist dann? Dann muss man die Frage stellen, wer hinter der Gewalt von Hamburg stecken könnte. Dann muss man auch fragen, in wessen Interesse die Orgien der Gewalt liegen. Die absehbare Vorherrschaft des Themas und die weitgehende politische Zuschreibung der Gewalt an die linke Seite bringen Angela Merkel in eine sehr gute Ausgangslage für die Wahl im September. Das damit massiv und unwiderstehlich aufgeworfene Thema nach der inneren Sicherheit zahlt sich für jene aus, die auch im Innern aufrüsten wollen und zum Beispiel auch die Bundeswehr ins Spiel bringen wollen. Wenn alles Linke diskreditiert wird, dann wird damit auch die Macht und der Einfluss der herrschenden Ideologie des Neoliberalismus und der damit verbundenen Kreise in Wirtschaft und Politik gestärkt und weiter gerechtfertigt.
Was wir hier sehen, ist eine Bürgerkriegsübung, eine groß angelegte Bürgerkriegsübung, eine Aufstandsbekämpfung ohne Aufstand. Das Ganze ist ein massiver Verstoß gegen die Verfassung und die Rufe, die zurzeit von de Maizière kommen, angesichts der Hamburger Verhältnisse müsse es eine Notstandsverfassung geben, sind unmäßig, sie sind rechtswidrig, sie sind geradezu unglaublich. Wir brauchen Meinungsfreiheit, wir brauchen Versammlungsfreiheit, wir brauchen keinen Polizeistaat.
Alles, was wir mit diesen Antiglobalisten sehen, soll so sein, das wird von irgendwo zugelassen und organisiert, um jemandem etwas zu demonstrieren. Und hier können wir uns die Frage stellen, wem soll was demonstriert werden? Wer war denn der Hauptbetroffene bei diesen Krawallen? Für die verbrannten Autos oder die geplünderten Geschäfte gibt es Versicherungen. Aber es gab vorher ein geordnetes Leben. Man wusste, wo man einkaufen kann. Und nun hat das Geschäft zu und muss sich mit Versicherungspapieren herumschlagen und das Geschäft wiederherstellen. Das ist viel Stress. Hier geht es um die normalen Bürger. Er ist unter Stress, er wird eingeschüchtert und dazu wird in den Medien folgendes Informationsfeld geschaffen. Gut, euch gefällt nicht, wie die Globalisierung läuft. Ja, hier läuft es schlecht, da läuft es schief, es läuft gar nicht gut. Aber was wäre die Alternative? Hier, bitteschön, die Antiglobalisten. Die zerstören euch absolut alles. Wollt ihr das? Und dann sieht sich das der Durchschnittsbürger an und denkt sich, nein, das will ich nicht. Ob nun die Globalisierung gut oder schlecht läuft, ich hatte dort irgendwie meinen Platz, konnte irgendwie leben und meine Probleme lösen und ein einigermaßen geordnetes Leben führen. Aber wenn diese Randalierer kommen, die alles zerstören, wie soll man da überhaupt leben? So wird Stabilität bei der Steuerung von sozialen Supersystemen erreicht. Also Zuckerbrot und Peitsche. Auf der einen Seite versetzt man die Menschen in Schrecken, auf der anderen Seite stimmen sie der Alternativlosigkeit dieser Art von Globalisierung zu. Und diejenigen, die im Moment die Globalisierung nach ihren Regeln gestalten, möchten nicht, dass jemand und schon gar nicht die Massen diesen Prozess stören. Deswegen werden diese Massen unter Spannung gesetzt. Sowas ist nicht zufällig. Wenn die Leute mit dem eigenen Überleben beschäftigt sind, dann interessiert sie die Globalisierung nicht. Die Antiglobalisten sind also ein Werkzeug der Globalisierung in den Händen eben jener Globalisten.
Ihr armen Reichen, ihr paranoiden Menschenverachter aus Wirtschaft und Politik, die ihr im Geheimen darüber nachdenkt, wie ihr uns zu Bewohnern eines anderen Planeten machen könnt. Für euch ist es zur Tugend geworden, die Erde zu zerstören. Wörter wie Fortschritt und Entwicklung werden von euch als Tarnwörter benutzt, um den Massenmord an Pflanzen, Tieren und Menschen zu rechtfertigen. Ihr empfindet keine Befriedigung, wenn ihr etwas so Wunderbares wie einen Berg oder einen See oder ein Volk im Urzustand seht. Eure Befriedigung misst sich am materiellen Gewinn. So wird der Berg zu Kies, der See zu Kühlwasser und das Volk zu einem manipulierten Heer von Erfüllungsgehilfen. Unsere Kinder wissen nicht mehr, was es bedeutet, über einen freien Geist zu verfügen. Es ist kein Wunder, dass sie die Erde nicht verteidigen, auf der sie leben. Sie leben gar nicht dort. Sie leben in der von euch geschaffenen Scheinwelt einer Unterhaltungsindustrie, nach Regeln und Gesetzen, die sie selber nicht gemacht haben. Das ist die Schuld, die ihr auf euch geladen habt. Aber vielleicht hat die globale Not, welche uns alle mehr oder weniger an den Rand der Existenz gebracht hat, ja dazu geführt, dass sich die Herzen der Menschen wieder öffnen.
Almost everything that you see in society or from official sources is fabricated or rigged. It's fictional. It's all designed to weave this artificial tapestry of beliefs and ideas and so-called truths in your mind that actually are not true and that are not based on reality. And the point of this is to create a system of control, a prison for your mind that gives you the illusion of thinking that you have freedom of thought or freedom of choice, or that you live in a democracy, for example. One of the easiest ways for the system to manipulate individuals and control is to rewrite the history and replace it with a propaganda version of history, and yet they are accepted by people as reality. Almost everything that you think is true was actually told to you by someone else. When you watch the news, they are telling you something that's true, and then that idea of truth transfers into your belief system. And now you believe that what they said was true because they reported it, but you never saw it. You weren't there. Mainstream media stages fake scenes. They set up studios and then act like they are on site reporting from a war zone. They manipulate everything. It's all theater. And so you're depending on third parties to tell you what's real in the world. Well, what happens when those third parties are deliberately lying to you, or withholding information, or falsifying, or distorting information? And that's actually the system in which we live. The media, government, academia, and it is these institutions that create this fictional construct in your mind, which we could call the matrix. And you are living in this matrix psychologically, and you think it's real. And it is created by implanting these false ideas into your mind and counting on the fact that you accept them without critical thinking. But also you're wired to accept consensus reality, which means that if enough people believe something and you find yourself in a position where you are the one person in a group that does not believe what the rest of the people believe in that group, then you are likely to change your belief, even in complete contradiction to your direct experience, because the consensus is considered a greater authority than what you see and experience with your own eyes and firsthand senses. You see, the media, government, and academia really only has to convince a certain critical mass of people. And from that point forward, then those people will enforce those myths and narratives. So what is reality? Reality then becomes whatever is promoted by the consensus institutions of official narratives. Reality is whatever they say it is, and it doesn't have to make sense, and it doesn't have to be scientifically valid. It doesn't have to even be true. It can be the opposite of truth. Colleges, in this way, are really waging this war on reality. The public school system does not train people to think for themselves, and this is all by design. They are there to create obedient workers who are conformists, who will go along with the system and not rock the boat and not question the status quo and not do anything other than what they are told by the government. The strategy is to put every person into a tribe that then shuts down their self-identity and limits them to the definition of that tribe. It might be the white person tribe, the black person tribe, the science tribe. It all starts from dividing people with these labels by forcing them into these tribes that have a very tightly defined set of boundaries that you are never allowed to explore or exceed in any way. The upshot of all of this is to keep humanity down and prevent the outbreak, if you will, of inspiration, innovation, freedom of expression, personal creativity, divine inspiration even, connection with spirit. And this is not a coincidence. This is all by design. Humanity is intentionally being kept down. Every person is born with a unique collection of skills and values, experiences, creativity, ideas, inspirations, connections with the divine. But instead of that, what we actually get from the top down is a demand to get back into your box, to be part of the tribe that you belong to. So what can you do as an individual to escape this prison for your mind? Well, one of the biggest things is to start thinking for yourself, which means you must discount everything you hear from any official source. You have to learn to reject those ideas and actually find wisdom and knowledge inward, and perhaps in nature, or perhaps in connection with the divine.
Fabricate once, make obtaining things that are just about within your reach the essence of life, they're going to be trapped into becoming consumers. The idea is to try to control everyone, to turn the whole society into the perfect system. Perfect system would be a society based on a dyad, a pair. The pair is you and your television set, or maybe now you and the internet, in which that presents you with what the proper life would be, what kind of gadgets you should have, and you spend your time and effort gaining those things which you don't need and you don't want, and maybe you'll throw them away. The point is to create uninformed consumers who will make irrational choices. That's what advertising is all about. And when the same institution's PR system runs elections, they do it the same way. They want to create an uninformed electorate which will make irrational choices, often against their own interests. And we see it every time one of these extravaganzas take place.
The so-called middle classes and the so-called working classes are all being targeted to the same end. And it comes under two United Nations agendas, Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. These are agendas for the transformation of global society that are orchestrated globally through the UN, but instigated locally. And because this global agenda is being introduced locally, they are hiding the global coordination of it. Now, when you look at these different agendas and documents, and then you compare them with the wish lists of the global social engineering organizations, the lists virtually are identical. And one that comes up again and again is the end to national sovereignty. This is what the European Union is all about. It's there to take national sovereignty away. A European Union which is run by dark suit, unelected bureaucrats that virtually no one can name. They also support basically open border immigration. And one of the key reasons that the migrant crisis has been systematically created, and it was, I mean, the evidence is overwhelming, is to bring lots of different cultures together to dilute the indigenous culture. The state to define the role of business and financial resources. That's the centralization of power over all business and all finance. Abolition of private property. Apparently it's not sustainable, but that won't apply to the less than 1%. The end of private property means you're taking away security from people and you're making them dependent on outside forces then for where they live. Restructuring the family unit. This is on the wish list of all these social engineering organizations. They want an end to the family unit because they want the state to take over control of the upbringing of children so they can be programmed with the state's mentality from the earliest possible age. And now we come to this part of the agenda that is specific to situations like Grenfell Tower. These are the creation of human settlement zones, high density micro apartments which allow 24/7 surveillance of everything that you do. And they're being brought about by not upkeeping and repairing property in areas you want people out of, and forcing them into the areas where you want to densely locate them. If you have a target population, then what you have to do to control that population is to divide and rule it. You have to set it at war with itself. So it is so focused on fighting between itself that people don't look up in different factions, different religions, different income brackets, different political beliefs. They don't all look up and say, hold on, the string's attached to me and the string's attached to you. There's only one bloke holding them. Yes, exactly.
Sobre la zona del aeropuerto de la ciudad de Graz, 2 objetos fueron videograbados realizando movimientos inteligentes en el cielo. 2 personas desde distintas ubicaciones lograron registrar los movimientos de estos. Con toda claridad podemos ver 2 objetos, los cuales presentan 2 luces en su estructura. Estos realizan vuelos rítmicos en círculos. Incluso en algunos momentos entran en las nubes y los dejamos de ver.
that morning in two of the English-speaking newspapers, there was a picture of two UFOs. So I had placed those on his table where he was going to be sitting. And I said, "Good morning, Mr. President." President Kennedy says, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "From what I've learned, we can't be the only living beings in God's creation." And he says, "You're right, young man. There is considerable knowledge as far as the actual being of UFO and ET phenomena that we're aware of today."
Basically, Majestic 12 was set up exclusively to focus on all of the issues and the policies concerning extraterrestrial life and technologies that had come into the possession of the US military, while at the same time feigning ignorance that such technologies existed. And as we go through the history of MJ12, we see that its policies have been mainly oriented towards keeping all of this information highly classified, restricting access to only a very small group within the US military-industrial complex that was wanting to monopolize these kinds of technologies and to develop them for their own benefit, where only select individuals would be given access, and all of the others, no matter how senior they are, these people would be excluded if it wasn't deemed that they had need-to-know access. Kennedy believed that the office of the president needed to be well in the loop on this issue and actually involved in the policy making, and not just leave it to this unelected committee to make policy. And we see this actually coming into full-blown conflict, where you have a president basically saying to the MJ12 committee, "Hey, you guys, you got to report to me, give me all the information, and this is where policy is made." And the MJ12 committee basically saying no, we're the ones that make policy, and you shouldn't interfere in something that you don't have a need to know.
James Forrestal, who was originally Secretary of the U.S. Navy and who would a few years later become the U.S. Secretary of Defense under President Truman. He became part of MJ12 and was also kind of crucial to Kennedy's understanding of and involvement with the reality of the UFOs and the aliens.
And Forrestal, from the very beginning, was involved in basically all the data that the US military had been gathering on extraterrestrial life. He was the one that proposed the Operation Paperclip. And Forrestal took Kennedy, who at the time was beginning to write articles, and as a kind of freelance writer, he was a book author. And so Kennedy had direct access to the technologies, the high-level military officials and political discussions that were all taking place in Germany at the time, involving Operation Paperclip. And Kennedy learned from Forrestal what was going on. And later on, when Kennedy decided that he would enter politics rather than joining Forrestal in the Navy, then Kennedy continued to be briefed by Forrestal.
So that kind of provides the backdrop for 15 years later when Kennedy becomes president.
Both Forrestal and Kennedy, they really did want to have the best people involved at all levels of government, whereas many of the members of the MJ12 committee that was wanting to monopolize these kinds of technologies and to develop them for their own benefit, their view was, let's kind of like see how this can help us with our agenda. And so this was the policy struggle between Forrestal and others within the Majestic 12 committee, and eventually that was what led to him being ousted as Secretary of Defense by Truman in 1949 in March, and then 2 months later basically being killed and kind of showed just how powerful the Majestic 12 committee was. We know that Kennedy actually did meet Eisenhower twice before becoming president. I think it's very reasonable to assume that Eisenhower would have been more specific in these private meetings with Kennedy about the nature of this threat that the military-industrial complex played. During this entire period, while Kennedy was making inquiries about UFOs, what's going on, he realized that it was all being run by the CIA. Dulles, as both the director of the CIA and as MJ1, circulates a set of draft directives basically directly implicated in the assassination of Kennedy. Anyone threatening Majestic 12 operations can be assassinated. And that pertains to any public official, no matter how high. There's no restriction there.
quest for happiness, you will probably never find it, because happiness is not a destination. You don't end up at happiness. Happiness is not a place that you get to. Happiness is something that happens on the way to you growing up. The more you grow up, the more you become love, the more you get rid of the ego, the more you get rid of your beliefs, your fears, then the happier you will be. And the reason you'll be happy is because you no longer will be so judgmental. You won't be thinking that everything is somebody else's fault. And then happiness just happens. It's not something you have to find. It's not an endpoint. It's the result of a life being lived well, as opposed to a struggle that's never ending. So as you grow up, lower your entropy, you become not so self-centered. It's not all about you. You don't live in a universe where you're at the center of it. It's not so much about you as it is about how can I help? What can I give? What can I do to be of service? How can I make this person feel better? Not, oh no, how could they say that about me? That makes me feel bad. See, that's all about me. As opposed to, well, I wonder why that person feels that way. How could I help them maybe see it some other way? And you don't help somebody see it other way by explaining to them how they're wrong. That never works. That just makes it worse. You have to help them grow up in their own way, just like you have to grow up in your way. Step one is to realize you have fear. All the choices that you make in a day, most of those are made by your fear. Becoming authentic has to do with just saying, well, okay, who am I? What am I? And most people have no idea, who am I? Because like we said, you identify with your ego. You're your ego, you're your story, your beliefs, that's who you are. Well, you see, that's not who we are. That's just the way we see ourselves. That's our projection of us. So becoming authentic means letting that story go and saying, all right, at the bottom level then, or just who am I? What do I feel about? And why do I feel that way? I need to change the way I am. Because when I'm just the way I am, I'm not very nice. My life gets unpleasant. Why is that? How is it the way I am is not very nice? Oh, I'm belligerent. Oh, I blame people. Well, I need to change that. You see? So now you're being authentic rather than justifying. See the difference? One of them, the ego justifies, and okay, I'm rude or I'm nasty or I'm whatever because I have to be, because people are like that. You blame them, justify your actions. That's the ego justifying. The opposite of that is being authentic. When you say, yeah, I am that way, that's not a good way to be. I need to be different than that. I can't change other people. Other people are who they are. I can only change myself. I need to let go that these things upset me and make me angry. See, so that's accepting the fear and dealing with it rather than hiding the fear, blaming others. There's no fear there. It's not me, it's them. Changing your outside world isn't going to make you happy. It'll change things for a while, and it may make you feel happier for a short time, but eventually you'll end up in the same place because that's who you are. That fear is defining you. You know, how many old people do you know who just aren't very happy? I mean, they get through life day by day, but they're not really happy. That's because they never did get rid of that fear. And guess what? After they die, they get to do it again. They get to try again. You see, so, you get all the chances you need to work on it, but if you never do it, you're kind of stuck in your consciousness evolution. You can't get past that point, and all your lives are just this constant string of struggle. I can't see why people would not choose to get rid of the fear, other than the fact that they're full of fear. They're so full of fear that they can't get rid of the fear because they're so into their story and their excuses and their blame and their sad woe is me that they just have a hard time breaking out of that story to be different. It's not about just acting different. It's about being different. You have to change. When you get rid of a fear, you're not the same person anymore. And if who you are is not the way you'd like to be, then change it. Don't be that way. Don't react that way. Catch yourself and don't go there. Just do it. Just start somewhere. Just do it. And it will find its own way. It will all settle out and work out, exactly how it should.